morning. Welcome to Politics is Power. Thank you so much for joining us today at Politics is Power. My name is Rosa Garvin, and we have Douglas Wilson. We're your hosts. As well, we have a special guest, Robert Dawkins with Democratic North Carolina. Democracy North Carolina. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, so Robert, thanks for coming out today. Can you tell us a little bit about what Democracy North Carolina is?
Sure. Well, Democracy North Carolina, we're a non-profit organization. We work to ensure that the public has access to voting and access to the political system. So our work's divided up into three different areas. Researching the issues, advocacy, working with the people to actually turn them out and work against or work for issues, and then civic engagement, actually out in the community, letting people know what's available and how they can take part in it and get involved. Our slogan's always been of the people, for the people, by the people. So making sure that the election process is fair.
Okay, all right. And well, you know, just looking at what you were saying for Democracy North Carolina, I know you guys focus on a lot of state issues. Very important to people here in North Carolina. That's why we have this show. We want to focus on the local issues as well as national. We want to focus on local issues too. So, as you know, Republicans took over the State House last year.
Yes.
And there were a lot of bills that went through.
Yes.
And one of them was, I believe it was the mandatory photo ID HB 351, and HB stands for House Bill 351. Can you tell us the status of that?
Sure. So the bill made it through, and luckily Governor Perdue, our governor, vetoed the bill. So once the bill is vetoed, then you need 3/5 of the House and 3/5 of the Senate to override her veto. The Senate, the way that it's made up, the conservatives have a veto-proof state Senate, so they overturned her veto, but it has yet to clear the House.
Okay.
For it to clear the House, the Republicans have the majority in the House, but they don't have a veto proof. They would need to get 4 Democrats to go along with them to overturn the governor's veto. Right now, they have not been able to come up with that.
Okay.
But what happened was when the House took it up, one of the Republicans voted along with the Democrats against
I remember that,
against HB 351. This is a parliamentary trick. If you're on the side that loses the veto, you can always call for it to come back. So the reason that one Republican voted with the Democrats on it was so that he could initially come back and say, I want us to take this back up. So they now have all the way through the end of the short session to take the bill back up. As far as a strategy, what the conservatives are trying to do is catch 4 or 5 Democrats out of catch 4 or 5 Democrats not being present on the day of the vote, and then they'd have the votes to do it.
So tell us a little more about the voter ID. How is it going to affect seniors, for example, as well as students?
Yes. So this is a definite, what we like to call a modern day poll tax. This is asking people to present IDs to vote. The way that the state now operates is you only have to show an ID the very first time that you vote. After that, it's not asked. If they do this, this would impact way over 500,000 votes, mainly senior citizens, African American votes, and the youth vote, the 18 to 29-year-old vote. Those are the demographics of people that either maybe have moved into a senior citizen facility, now they don't have a current ID, or in the case of like college students, every year you might move from dorm to dorm, your IDs wouldn't match, and this is a way that you can disenfranchise those voters.
And I'm looking here at some of the status on voter ID, and they also added in the Senate a bill S-47.
Yes.
And that is not same day, that is Sunday voting, that's early voting on Sunday, which we know is souls to the poll.
Right.
And for those of you who go to church, you know that that's something big, in which we are able to maximize the voting process on Sunday.
Yes.
And Now, what's the status of that bill? Is that in addition to voter ID, or is that?
Yes, it's a total separate bill.
Okay.
Senate Bill 47. It has not cleared the House, and it's what we would call an omnibus bill. It's a bill where they packed a lot of different disenfranchising things into one bill. So Senate Bill 47, if it was to clear, it would do away with same-day voter registration.
Wow.
It would shave 1 week off of early voting. It would get rid of same-day voter registration, and it would get rid of Sunday voting. Just to give the idea of how important Sunday voting is, in the last major election, 37,000 people voted on Sunday.
Wow.
If you look at that in a overall, as far as how that would impact the election, let's look, even though we're not talking partisan, we're going to talk about how President Obama won the state of North Carolina. He won the state of North Carolina by only 15,000 votes. All of these different measures in SB 47 would make it almost impossible for those same results to happen. So if you got rid of Sunday voting, you just lost 37,000 votes. If you shaved a week off of early voting, it would make it almost impossible for all of the different groups and churches to turn their people out, which would have a bad impact. And one of the biggest things that we took advantage of was same-day voter registration. Same-day voter registration let us go into our communities, in our senior citizen facilities, and say, hey, are you registered to vote? The person would say, no, I'm not, I've missed the deadline. It allowed another opportunity for us to capture voters. So if you get just Senate Bill S47 itself, would disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of voters, which always on this target break Democratic. So it's not like this was something that just came out of the blue. This is a tactic that the conservatives are using to make sure that they disenfranchise blacks, young people, and senior citizens. Senior citizens doesn't fit into maybe the Democrat mold as much, because that what goes, Republican or Democrat, but the 18 to 29-year-old vote always breaks Democrat. The African American vote always breaks Democrat, and the bill was written to make sure that it disenfranchised those two communities.
Wow.
Especially.
So, with Democracy North Carolina, how are you getting the word out to the communities?
Sure. So since this first came up last February, we've had constant trips up to the General Assembly. We've taken probably close to 1,000 people to the General Assembly for one lobby visits. We've made sure that we've gone to the actual vote so that they can see us there. We've had phone banks. We've had individual meetings within the districts with the conservatives, and right now we're scared because April the 23rd is another short session, a one-day session that they have, that they're going to do what I told you before, count, see if they can catch enough Democrats there and try to pass HB 350. But then it's not over then. If they do not try to pass it on April 23rd in that one-day session, they can still take it back up anytime in the short session that starts in May. And if it's passed, it will really wreak havoc on voting for the upcoming election, which is the plan.
So, is this unconstitutional to you?
Well, it's not unconstitutional because there's already been states that have passed it. The state of Indiana was an example that came with a really strong photo ID legislation. And by that I mean different states have enacted the legislation in different measures. Like some states have said that we'll have photo ID, but we'll take Help America Vote Act documents. In other words, if you bring a light bill or a phone bill, we'll let that count. Some states have done signing an affidavit. If you show up and you don't have your ID, you can sign an affidavit that says I am who I say I am, and if not, then I can be arrested for perjury. And then there's the real strict form, which Indiana passed, which if it's not a current state-issued photo ID, you can't vote. That was taken to the Supreme Court, the Indiana Supreme Court, and they upheld it. And the Justice Department upheld it, as long as they would provide free IDs for people that don't have an ID. But what are the chances, if that bill passes, what are the chances, say you're a senior citizen, you didn't know about the law, you find out about it 3 days before the election, what's the chances of you getting that new photo ID and going to vote? So whichever form passes is unacceptable for us at Democracy North Carolina. But I wanted you to know that in most of the cases, the Justice Department has upheld it as long as they offered another option, like getting a free ID. The state of South Carolina, if you've noticed lately, they initiated theirs, and the Justice Department did find reasons wrong with their law, and they're trying to get around it.
Yeah.
But again, I want to let people know that this is a calculated effort by the conservatives to disenfranchise votes that normally don't go their way. And our main way of fixing it is going to be internal in the state, not just working with the Justice Department, but the people standing up and saying this is something that takes away from our rights.
Yeah, and you were talking about same-day voter registration, early voting, voter ID. Let's kind of segue a little bit into redistricting. We know that North Carolina's congressional districts and state house senate districts were really turned upside down.
Yes.
But the problem is, even though these lines are drawn every 10 years, the main problem is really not redistricting, isn't it? The gerrymandering of these districts?
Right. It's what we like to refer to as packing.
Yeah.
Packing is many African American votes that, if you didn't pack them in those particular districts, would have had more power to influence other districts. So I'm one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit against this redistricting model that North Carolina has done. And what it has done is in specific areas. It's one, taking African Americans and pack them into districts so that it limits their power. Secondly, it's also taken districts that were normally held by women, and it's taken those districts and taken women that were in two separate districts now and made them fight for one district. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, not only is it packing African Americans, but it's also hurting the amount of women. With the state already doesn't have many women representing them. So it's a calculated effort to limit the black vote and to limit representation in the state by women.
Okay. And in regards to the gerrymandering again, why do you think that these lines are drawn that way? Is it to, I know you're talking about packing, is it just to keep one party in power, or keep one, or for just to keep, or is it just based on population growth, I should say?
Well, the census itself is based on population growth, but the party that's in control of the General Assembly gets to decide how to draw the line. So the answer to your question is, the Republicans want to make sure that they have control. African Americans don't vote for Republicans, so they packed as many African Americans into districts so that they will control the process for the next 10 years. That itself is a violation, but it's also something, if we want to look at it on an overall scope, Democrats and Republicans both do the same thing as far as trying to figure out how I'm going to keep power. This is just an awful play because it limited the amount of African Americans, separate from the partisanship, but limited the power of African Americans in the state by just giving them a few districts that they're in control of.
Tell us a little bit about the education bill that was passed, and how did that actually happen, and how has it affected North Carolina?
Well, and education goes a little bit out of my purview, since we fight basically on the political side of it, on what is messing with your rights as far as your voting. But I can say that the governor has stood in the way of the conservatives' effort to balance the budget on the backs of teachers and on the backs of students. I know that the governor, when she vetoed the budget last time, and she also froze when the Republicans were trying to make it seem like she was taking money from unemployment benefits. The Republicans this time have been big on making bills or making additions to where when you look at it just on the face, it seems like they were fighting for the people. In other words, the governor froze your unemployment benefits. The governor didn't freeze the unemployment benefits because she didn't want to pay people unemployment. She froze it because the bill was written in a way to where even though I'm going to give you this money for unemployment, I'm going to take the money out of your Medicare, your Medicaid, and schools. But the public viewed it as, oh, she's not trying to give her our benefit. The governor said on the TV the other day a real important statement that North Carolina's future is tied to education. Out of all of the southern states, North Carolina has made its mark on what it's done for education. So when you turn around now and you make a budget, or you come up with bills that are going to give you money, but it's going to take away money from students with disabilities, when it's going to take away from funding school lunches, when it's going to take away from giving the teachers a raise, but at the same time you can find loopholes to give corporations money. This is a very bad bill. And I remember, I grew up in South Carolina, but I remember a time when North Carolina and South Carolina were both on this race to the bottom. What's made North Carolina the great state that it has been is how much money we spend on education. It's one of the fastest growing states, and the conservatives are trying to limit the money. Every year we grow by thousands of students, and our money spent per student should reflect that. If you're going to balance the budget, then balance it on the back of corporations and loopholes, and not balance it on the backs of our students.
Yeah. And Rose and I were having a discussion about this where when it comes to education, the problem is that if you're not funding the educational system, the students of today are not being trained for those jobs that are coming up.
Yes.
And what happens is that if you take away that funding, we get far behind, and we become less educated, and the companies that have been relocating to North Carolina don't want to come here because our community is not going to be as educated as most states. So
exactly, and you can even look at it on the amount of money that we spend per pupil. Mm-hmm. You can also look that North Carolina has one of the best, if not the best, community college system. Mm-hmm. Our universities are well known: Duke, Chapel Hill, UNC Charlotte's making strides. Mm-hmm. These cuts in elementary education and secondary education will wipe out all of the things that we've done to create this good community college and education system, because our kids won't be able to get into the schools. So it wouldn't matter that Central Piedmont's one of the best community colleges in the country if you don't have students that can go and they can get into the college. Yeah. But can they compete in robotics and computer science and math? And in the past 10 years, we've made such strides on this that I can't believe that the conservatives would rather save money out of the budget by taking away student benefits and also giving teachers raises, which they deserve.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, since we're staying on education, I kind of want to segue a little bit. We're going back and forth between the bills. Something that's come up on TV a lot in this election is public financing and money in politics. Yes. And if I'm reading this correctly, House Bill 452 would end public financing for Council of State races and make judicial elections partisan. Now, I know that we try to usually keep our judges nonpartisan, and which I find kind of odd that this bill is coming up, especially with healthcare being fought in the Supreme Court. We want our judges to be as nonpartisan as possible.
Yes.
What is your take on this bill, and what is the status that you know?
Right now, S452 has not moved, but again, it can come back up in the General Assembly in the short session. Yeah. What 452 would do, and I want to correct one little part: the judicial money, the money right now that we use for Superior Court and Court of Appeals, wouldn't be affected by it, but it would end financing for what we call the Council of State positions. We want to grow that. What we've got right now is we've got the Superintendent of Public Education, the Insurance Commissioner, and the State Auditor, and they're publicly financed. So this gives the a regular person, a Douglas Wilson, the opportunity to run for that office and not be in the hands of big business. So in other words, if you're the insurance commissioner, and you had to take money from MetLife and North Carolina Life and all of these type of companies, you would be in the hands of them. They expect you to vote the way that they want you to vote. The Republicans would like to end that so that they will have more influence. Their money can outweigh the will of the people. That's why we say one person, one vote. If you do away with public financing, which we're one of the only states that has it, then it would be hard for a regular person to run for office that's not in the hands of big money. And this has been our biggest fight, and it's what our bread and butter issue is in Democracy, North Carolina. It goes even bigger than the judicial races. It goes, now you can even talk about how the conservative groups have started super PACs. And these super PACs' whole purpose is to raise money to influence candidates. And without voter-owned elections or public financing, we the people have no recourse but to be in the hands of big money.
So basically, this is different from the overall negative connotation of money in politics by an election. This is totally different from that, right?
No, this is exactly the same thing. North Carolina, through voter-owned elections and public financing for those council of state positions and for the judicial positions, has a way to where if I, Robert Dawkins, want to run for office, I can get a certain amount of petitions signed showing that I've got support around the community. I've raised money from individuals like Rosa and Doug in small increments of $200, $300. Then I've reached a threshold where the state will fund my campaign. Now that doesn't mean that I have to do this. If I want to do it the other way, I can, going out and raising money from corporations. But the people can look and say, Doug is a real candidate because he didn't get his financing from Bank of America, Duke Energy, Wells Fargo. He got his money in small increments from the public, and the government paid for him to run for office. So he's indebted to the people and not to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Duke Energy.
Makes sense. Good. Well, lastly, last question that I have is, what is what is your focus now going into the 2012 election?
Well, one is going to be, again, fighting HB 351 and SB 47 and making sure that 452 doesn't come to light and gets voted on. But on top of that, it is letting the public know why it's important to vote. You can always get people to come out for an election if you've got a savvy candidate. But what we try to look and try to make sure that people are seeing is empowering them to go vote because they see why to go vote. And it's through things like making sure education is funded, making sure that House Bill 351 for photo ID doesn't pass, for getting people up to the General Assembly so that they can actually see what's going on and speak up on it. Also fighting for our souls to the polls, the Sunday voting, making sure that churches understand what they have the right to do and being able to have this option for Sunday voting to turn people out to vote. So those are our main issues. There's one other issue that we're fighting now, and that's the defunding of the Help America Vote Act money. There's $4 million sitting in a fund that the General Assembly already has to pay out to the different counties to make sure that the machines are being maintained, that the poll workers are being trained, and paying for poll workers. The conservatives have decided to freeze that money. Without that money, each one of the counties is going to have to step in like never before and fund that. For Charlotte, for instance, without this Help America Vote Act money, the county's going to have to find $300,000 just to maintain their machines to get things ready to vote. So those are the main issues that we're working on.
And so you are getting this out to the public as well. So how has the response been from the public?
The response, once people see around the names of the bill and they actually find out what's in the bills, it's been great. How the Republicans have worded the bills are like, take HB 351 that would limit, would make photo ID. They call the bill Restore Confidence in America Act. Restore Confidence in Voting Act. So when you go out, people will say, well, Robert, why are you fighting this? This is called Restore Confidence in Government. I want confidence in government. But once we actually break down the bill and show people how the bill affects them, then they're mad about it. So our big thing is trying to get over the fact that the conservatives have been able to write the legislation for the first time in 100 years without the Democrats' input, and secondly, how they frame the message. But once we get around that, the response has been good. Now the only thing that the public can do in all of this is writing letters to the General Assembly, taking trips to the General Assembly, and spreading the word on how bad these bills will impact people. But to answer your question is, once people find out what's in these bills, they have been upset.
Okay, well, Robert, we definitely want to bring you back
Sure.
to talk more about this, because we believe it's important that our viewers know what's going on in Raleigh and keep up to date with these bills. So we want to invite you back. And how can people find out more about Democracy North Carolina?
Well, they're more than welcome to go to our website, democracy-nc.org.
Okay.
And we've created a special website to let everybody know everything that there is to know in North Carolina about elections. And that one is called electionconnections.com. Both of those websites, and I'm always available. Well, my wife makes me cut the phone off about 9. But my phone number is 704-957-3105.
Okay.
Again, that's 704-957-3105. And I want to thank you and Rosa, because y'all are working on something that most people aren't doing. Most people will spend a lot of times talking about politics in a national framework, but very little time understanding how state politics affects them. So I'm really glad that you've got this show now, and I hope everybody will watch it so that they can see how the things are impacting.
Thank you, appreciate that. So thanks again, Robert. Rosa, thank you as well. And remember to catch us on our website at www.politicsispower.com, where you can find all the latest local, national, and international news. And make sure you click on the political report, where you can read a commentary each day of what's going on, the various issues that are pressing in our country and in our state. Thank you very much. And once again, remember, politics is power.
I'm Lieutenant Governor Walter Dalton, and I'm voting against Amendment 1, and I want you to know why. This issue was designed to divide us when we need to be coming together to tackle the many challenges our state faces. The people of North Carolina are worried about jobs and the economy, and that's where our energies need to be focused. This amendment hurts our job recruitment and our job retention efforts at precisely the wrong time. In fact, many major corporations have told us that Amendment 1 goes too far. It undermines health care and prescription benefits for children and committed couples who currently have those benefits. It also undermines existing domestic violence laws. It's deeply disturbing that this legislature spent so much time and effort on an issue that doesn't create one job or help educate one person. This issue isn't a priority for anyone who has been listening to the real concerns of working families during these hard times. Let's get back to the business of getting North Carolina back to work. I'm voting against Amendment 1, and I hope you will too.